Hey, welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie.
Welcome to the watch party!
They're going out tonight. You can hear, they're keeping the energy high. Right, our final big interview of tonight's show is on something that I think is really important that everyone's talking about. We've just spent the whole show, or large parts of the show, talking about defamation on the internet, about disinformation on the internet, about bigotry on the internet, and about how to regulate it. But there are other things that we always are talking about now, like artificial intelligence, that are becoming more and more, it's becoming more prevalent and widespread, and it's an unbelievably powerful tool to potentially do a lot of good, but potentially do a hell of a lot of harm. And for that reason, I've wanted to speak with somebody in South Africa who understands how the law needs to catch up to match that, because often legal systems move quite slowly in developing the law. But unfortunately, in the last 20 years, we've had maybe the fastest technological revolution ever. And we need the law to catch up and match that. And so tonight, I'm delighted to welcome onto the show legal expert and lawyer, Emma Sadlier is here, everybody. I've wanted you on for such a long time. It is wonderful to finally have you on. So let's just start start with the kind of work that you're doing at the moment, which I think is very interesting and unusual, because it's like a whole new branch of law, which deals with a lot of things that we've known about and had laws about since the beginning of law, like defamation, bigotry and the rest, public utterances, hate speech. But there's also a lot of brand new things on the internet like AI. What exactly do you do in that world?
Well, it's a very good question, because to be honest, when I left a big law firm where I was in the media law department and I had clients like Micah, who were investigative journalists who were always getting in trouble, and we were doing a lot of interesting training, educational work, making sure that they understood where the limits of freedom of expression lay. Then we would do pre-publication work, vetting shows like yours, make sure that you're not going to get into trouble. And then when people did get into trouble, helping them. And I think that I just saw this rapid shift from mainstream media to social media.
Right.
And I felt pretty helpless for a lot of people who were phoning me to say, look, I've messed up. I've turned my principal into a meme and I've been expelled from school, or
really?
That kind of thing. A lot, right?
You can't get expelled from school for making your principal a meme, can you?
Oh, you can, I mean, even worse. Like, one of the first cases I dealt with, Dan, was a case that went all the way to the Constitutional Court, where some grade 11 kids from Waterkloof High School photoshopped very badly. I mean, like the most appalling Photoshop job you can imagine. The face of their principal and deputy principal onto naked bodies, and then covered the private parts, covered their genitals with the school's logo, sent it to a few mates, and then a grade 9 student printed it multiple times, brought it to school and stuck it on all the notice boards. The kids had criminologia charges laid against them. They have criminal records. Totally have criminal records. They had to do 200 hours of community service. They had to go and clean cages at the Pretoria Zoo every Saturday morning. They were sued for defamation. It went all the way to the Constitutional Court. I don't even need to tell you what the legal expenses were for those poor kids. So I realized quite quickly that education was critical, even amongst school students, even amongst primary school students. And it's a very difficult space to be in, because social media law doesn't exist. AI law doesn't exist. It's all of these old common law principles that we're now trying to apply on these new, in these new worlds. And in many cases, they do the job. In many cases, we need new laws.
Yeah, and I also think that, so in the last week, we've again had the same conversation. Should you regulate podcasts? I'm not a legally qualified person in any way, but as someone who does podcasting, has done media for 11 years, is deeply ingrained in this world, all that I feel is that in the old days, the law could process instances of defamation, bigotry, disinformation, because it would happen very rarely, because there were very few people who had mouthpieces to be able to go on a newspaper or a radio station or a TV show and say things to a lot of people. But now everybody has the power to do that, because everyone has a phone. You need to buy some data or get access to the internet, and then you can say something that millions of people will see. And for me, I'd love to hear what you think about developing the law, but I also worry that there's just a capacity problem, because our courts are already overwhelmed. I don't want to suggest another specialist court, but just something that can rapid fire, because if you drill down to it, it's not just podcasts, it's every post on TikTok you've ever seen could have a defamation or a libel thing in it, could have disinformation.
Never mind that, on a WhatsApp status. Do you know how many cases are landing up in courts because people have said something on a WhatsApp group, on their WhatsApp status, on WhatsApp channels? So you're absolutely right. We all have the power to press a button and publish to a lot of people. Now, I'm often asked, even at the end of my talks, ma'am, how did you know you wanted to be a social media lawyer? And there's no such thing as social media when I was at school. I got my first BlackBerry when I got my first job. It was a totally different world. If I wanted to have my opinion published on a public platform, I could write a letter to the editor of a newspaper and hope like hell they published it. But even then, there were editorial layers, right? There was someone checking it and deciding whether to publish it.
Right.
And or I could maybe phone 702 or Cape Talk, maybe like phone a radio station if I was brave enough, which I wasn't. So now we all have that power. And yes, we've all got these common law principles that apply to us: defamation, hate speech, crimen injuria. We've got rules now around threats, incitement. If I send you a threat of damage to property, a threat of violence, it's a criminal offense, even if I never see you again, even if that's just a WhatsApp voice note. And what I think a lot of people don't understand is that we're not just dealing with adults here. We're dealing with children, with teenagers. Children can be arrested and criminally charged from 12 years old in South Africa. And they are. I can tell you of at least a case a week this year where teenagers are being arrested because of what they're up to on their phones. We have rules around defamation, suing somebody for infringement of privacy. Do you know what the age of civil capacity is in South Africa? How old you got to be sued in South Africa? 7.
7?
From 7 years old, you can sue and be sued.
To all the 6-year-olds who watch this show, you have until your next birthday, okay? Make it count.
That's a good point. I've got a child who's just about to turn 6, and she's got a year left in her. But it's understanding how, and I obviously don't know of any 7-year-olds being sued, but I do know of 12-year-olds who I've even sent letters of demand, cease and desist type letters saying, stop bullying this kid, stop defaming the kid, stop creating deepfake pornographic images of them. I'm seeing it even at 12 years old.
So you mentioned earlier the law needs to be developed. I'm not asking you to suggest right now what all the laws are, but what things do you think could go a long way to affect all of this kind of information slop that's flowing around and hurting people?
Yeah, I think that we've got to be careful of thinking we need new laws for everything. We have got very good common laws in South Africa. We have a brilliant Bill of Rights. We all have the right to privacy, the right to equality, the right, subsect of the right to dignity, the right to reputation, the right to religion. We have these fundamental rights. South Africa has been very good at cautiously guarding the right to freedom of expression. We've got to be careful we're not going to over-regulate. Right. Also, if anybody followed Poppy with any kind of interest, you'll know how long it takes.
Oh, the Poppy Act.
The Poppy Act.
Not Poppy Sabir.
No.
Focus.
Not Poppy Sabir, and certainly not the flowers. But really, it was years in the making. If we think about the rate of AI and how quickly it's changing, my understanding is that there's a working committee that is preparing a draft bill, which I think will be largely modeled on the European AI bill. And Rwanda seems to have done a very good job on the African content, because we do need something that's a bit Afrocentric. But it's got to be very general principles, because we just don't know where the technology is going. So when I'm talking about AI at the moment, we're talking still about defamation. If you ask ChatGPT about Dan Corder and suddenly it attributes all these stories that you've written about to you, which is a case that's happened in Germany at the moment, who can you sue for defamation?
Can I just quickly ask a question?
Yeah, well, that's your job.
Earlier in this show, we may or may not have posted a tweet by Cyril Ramaphosa on an alleged Christmas saying, shout out Satan, love that guy, #MVP. It was clearly fake and a joke. How much trouble am I in right now?
You're okay. We have a specific defense. We have a specific defense in South African law of satire.
Okay,
right?
good.
It's why Zapiro and you and Trevor Noah can get away with a whole lot more than I can as a boring lawyer, right? Provided, and humor. It's one of my and I'm such a law nerd, so forgive me for this, what I'm about to say. But one of my favorite pieces of writing in South African jurisprudence is the Constitutional Court's judgment in the Laugh It Off case. Do you remember Justin North, the T-shirts, and SAB had a sense of humor failure and took him to court on the basis that the trademark infringement of SAB in the black label, white guilt.
It was a calling black label joke.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just the most magnificent piece of writing about how important humor is when we're dealing with the chaos of our society, especially the trauma of South Africa's past. So humor does have a very special, guarded place in South African jurisprudence.
So I want to hear more about the AI now that I have shamelessly got free pro bono advice from you on a script
anytime.
earlier
I'm your homie. So when we talk about AI, so the thing that I'm seeing most, Dan, in the AI world is the generation of AI-created deepfake content, but not just like the tweet you referred to a moment ago. We're talking about images, but particularly pornographic images.
Right.
We're seeing it left, right, and center, right? I can take a picture of you from the website, put you into the Undress app, into the Nudify app, turn you into a nude and circulate it. Now, thankfully, we've been working on legislation for a long time, which governs not just real image-based violence, but also fake image-based violence. So if you send a picture of your genitals to your partner and they put it on the internet or show it around, that's a 300,000 Rand fine and 4 years in prison.
For who?
I was going to say for the baddie, but
partner.
We've got to be careful about how we use the word baddie these days, right? So for the person who was
shared it,
who shared it, right? But the law is not differentiating at the moment between real images and fake images. So if somebody creates a deep fake of a 16-year-old, the law is prosecuting those kids for creation of child pornography, distribution of child pornography. They don't care whether it's real or fake. So we have these existing laws which can be used, I think, very effectively. You know, I think I would anticipate our AI legislation will take a long time, and it'll have to be general principles about human oversight, accountability, transparency, where somebody needs explainability. Now that's like a boring legal term, but basically like you apply for credit, you apply for insurance, and you get turned down, and that was decided by an AI tool.
I see.
An AI tool can't do that, because in those instances we'd need what we call explainability. Basically, somebody needs to give you a reason, and if that reason is being made in a black box, then AI is not the right place.
Exactly.
It's not the right place for AI. So we're dealing with a lot of those kind of things. I think that general principles is going to be the way to go. If we just look at the rate of how fast AI is changing. I mean, I spoke at an AI conference last week, and just between day 1 of the conference and day 2 of the conference, we had ChatGPT 5, right?
Wow.
So that's how quickly it changes. We've got some very interesting copyright cases, the New York Times case, and I think it's a very important warning to all users of particularly ChatGPT. That's from the last week of May this year. OpenAI has been forced to keep in its control every single piece of output data that it answers, right? So whatever, if you're using ChatGPT, for example, as your psychologist, and you're asking very personal information, they have to keep that information until the end of this court case, which I would say will be at least another year. And as we know, all digital content can be hacked. We're seeing hacks happening. Do not use ChatGPT as if it is a confidential space.
For sure. What in South African law is there about specifically intentionally spreading disinformation that is absolutely not, it's making a claim to have a truth quality in it, to be showing the real world, but it is absolute lies. That I feel like is a massive thing. It's like going to become a crisis of confidence where people go online to find out about the world but can't really trust or believe anything that they are seeing, including the real stuff. What is South African law doing with that, if anything?
Well, I'm afraid what I say in my teaching is presume everything you see, everything you read is fake until you can prove that it's true. And I appreciate that that's a very dark world to live in, but I think it's where we've got to. But we can't underestimate the power of disinformation, especially where political forces are at work. During COVID, under the Disaster Management Act, there was a specific fake news offense. It basically said if you were sharing fake news around COVID with the intention to dupe people, it was a criminal offense, and we did see some prosecutions. We don't have a general disinformation defense, but very often it's defamation. If we look at what happened in the EFF Trevor Manuel case, it was the first time where I've seen a judge look at something. It was a case years ago where the EFF tweeted a statement saying Trevor Manuel was nepotistic and had appointed his cousin as the SARS commissioner. It was absolute nonsense. And within a few hours, EFF even admitted that it was nonsense. But the court made a very interesting ruling in awarding 500,000 Rand in damages as well, but basically a declaration of falsity. It's basically a judge looking at it and saying this is fake news, right? But that's an expensive exercise. So it's also one of the reasons, Dan, that I really like people to have their own presence on social media, so that if you are the victim of horrible fake news, you can immediately take to your own channels to dispel it. But it is a difficult thing. It is something that can trigger all sorts of different legal consequences, for most frequently defamation. And I think that we've really got to be, as users, very careful about what we're sharing, because remember, in South Africa we hold secondary publishers responsible for content as well.
Of course.
So if you post fake news and I share it, then the person who has been the victim of that online harm can sue you, but they can also sue me because I've looked at it and decided to publish it. So just be very, very careful. Before you jump on the naming and shaming bandwagon, make sure what you're sharing is true.
I really hope that Emma somehow gets to talk to every South African who has ever been born and will ever be born. Emma Sadlier, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful. Wasn't she wonderful? Thank you.